Okay, quick message before we start here. Thank you guys so much for the support recently. In less than 3 days, my last video about the Legacy event got over 6,000 views, 200 likes, and over doubled my subscriber count. I got tons of amazing and supportive comments, including ones from Jurwa and Adamir, which is seriously insane, especially for just my second video. I seriously can't thank you all enough. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled content. JToH and Geometry Dash are some of the most closely related games on the internet. They are pretty similar games on the most basic level. They're replayable, addictive, and painfully difficult. Although Geometry Dash is much more popular than JToH, people that have played one of these games have likely played the other. Even some top players like Zoink have played JToH quite a bit. Despite the friendliness between the two communities, there's a long-term debate about which game is harder. There are different arguments in favor of either game, and it really depends on whichever one you're better at, but I don't care. Instead, I'm going to take this argument way too far and settle once and for all which game is actually harder to play. If you're watching this video, you probably know what Jukes Towers of Hell is. If you somehow found this video and don't know much about it, then I'll briefly go over it. JToH is an obby game, but not in the traditional Roblox sense. Instead of a winding obstacle course with frequent checkpoints, JToH's obbies instead travel vertically, with 0 checkpoints. The only way to prevent yourself from falling back to the start is to catch yourself on the obstacles below. The towers can range from a quick and easy experience to a nearly impossible, tediously long tower that only the best of the best can beat. As long as you're willing to put in the effort to improve, the game has tons of content that can keep you going for years. One of the biggest factors in determining how difficult a game can be is the controls. JToH pretty much uses the basic Roblox movement. There's WASD, jump, and shift lock. For the most part, jumps don't require anywhere near pixel-perfect inputs unless you're playing towers past the boundary of the main difficulty chart. For this video, we're only focusing on the main 11 difficulties because I don't have anywhere near enough skill to play those, and I don't think anyone does unless they've completely gone crazy. Anyway, before people can beat those sorts of towers, they actually need to get good at the game. JToH's tutorial is pretty minimal, only having Tower of Annoyingly Simple Trials in Ring 1. The tower doesn't really teach actual obby skills and instead shows the player a lot of the special objects and mechanics you'll see going forward. Even for being one of the easiest towers in the game, you still might need a bit of prior obby experience to be able to beat this. Unfortunately, that's where 95% of Roblox players quit JToH because trying for more than 20 minutes is too much for their poor little attention span. For the 5% who make it past the beginner phase, it's still really difficult to truly get used to the physics and controls. As new players progress through the areas and become more familiar with the game, it still gets harder to keep up with the seemingly unlimited difficulty that some towers in the later areas have. And even then, this doesn't even apply to almost anybody because out of the game's 100 million visits, only 400,000 unique players have even beaten Toast, and just 122,000 have unlocked Ring 2. A big reason for why so many people are unable to improve is that you almost need good knowledge of the physics and controls. There are 6 buttons you have to press, and as towers get harder, the inputs just get more and more precise. Towers can have hundreds of jumps and tricks you need to pull off, and if you mess up just once, you're losing potentially hours of your time. People can take weeks, if not months, to beat soul-crushing towers. Back when I played on mobile, it took me more than 3 years of playing to beat an extreme tower for the first time. JToH is a relentless game that seriously doesn't pull any punches. But how does Geometry Dash hold up?
No! 98!
Geometry Dash. You've heard of it, you've seen it, and you've probably played it, even if it was on your cousin's laptop when you were 7. Geometry Dash on the surface level is an extremely simple game. You're a cube, and you jump to avoid spikes and blocks. For the harder side of the game, it's a fast-paced precision game that needs nothing short of pure focus. If you're not familiar with this game, GD is a 2D platformer with only one input, the click. The game's main difficulty comes from the user-created levels made through the level editor. The editor has so many decoration options and even items called triggers which can be used to change pretty much any property of any item, essentially making this a sandbox. Levels can be anywhere from a castle to a train station to a tidal wave to literally hell. If you're not one of those people who immediately goes to the hardest levels and then instantly gives up because it's too hard, then you're going to be starting with the main levels. Geometry Dash actually does a really good job teaching its basic mechanics. It doesn't have any signs or an actual tutorial level, but you get to learn the game as you go through the main levels, which get more and more advanced as you progress. If you want naturally well-made, in-depth video covering the progression of the main levels, I highly recommend you watch JToH's video talking about it. For now, the main focus is what you can play after getting good at the game, the user-made demon levels. Unlike JToH, the difficulties in this game are traditional, with just some basic rankings. It ranges from easy difficulty, which is so baby mode that even the 7-year-old on their cousin's laptop could probably beat it in just a few tries, to demon difficulty, which usually have quick game mode changes, precise clicks, and usually very learny gameplay. This difficulty has 5 sub-difficulties from Easy Demon all the way to Extreme Demon. Extreme Demon is this game's equivalent of JToH's catastrophic and horrific difficulties. Possible, but only if you're mentally crazy. Most levels of this difficulty have insanely precise inputs, require high CPS, and at least a week of grinding to complete. Like JToH, there aren't any checkpoints as long as you're playing classic mode, which is what most people play, but they're almost always less than 3 minutes long. Still, Geometry Dash is no doubt a worthy competitor against JToH for the title of the hardest platformer game. But which one is it?
What the fuck? What? No!
JToH and Geometry Dash both have their quirks that make the game truly a rage game. This is normally the part of the video where the YouTuber wouldn't actually give you a good answer and just say, but it's really just an opinion. But I know you came here for an answer, so I'm gonna give you one. Punishing endurance tests are fast-paced and precise. After playing both games for years and getting really good at them, the harder game, based on everything I've played, is JToH. And don't yell at me in the comments, I still think Geometry Dash is one of the hardest games ever made, especially when you focus on user-made levels. In fact, according to Google, the human eye can only see up to about 60 frames per second, and some timings in the hardest levels are twice as precise as that, which is kinda crazy. But when you put it into perspective, JToH just has more things that make it harder. It's more punishing, the levels are significantly longer, it's more complicated, and the one that sticks out the most to me is that it's so much harder to learn. Geometry Dash's main levels give you more than enough time to get used to the physics, mechanics, and overall design of the game, and JToH just doesn't. I'm not saying it's a flaw, even though it kind of is, but right as you join the game, you're met with the complicated ring select, a large assortment of towers, a difficulty chart, and overall, it's overwhelming. Especially if you're like me and had zero idea what this game even was. It throws you into the game expecting that you already know Roblox's controls and how the game works. I mean, it's a bunch of games within a game, similar to Mario Maker, so you're expected to have played other game experiences, I guess, whatever, within Roblox beforehand. But if we want to really compare the two games fairly, we need to assume that the player knows nothing about what they're getting into. Even if you had prior knowledge, JToH is just harder to get used to. Geometry Dash is a single input game. You click, something happens. Super easy to learn, and it doesn't take long before you memorize the physics. JToH, on the other hand, has 6 main inputs. Every time you make a jump, you have to press the certain buttons you need to press, know when and how long you're going to press them, and time your initial jump so that the inputs work in about a quarter of a second. Geometry Dash is similar, but all your attention can be directed to one single input, making it a lot easier to time your clicks. In general, JToH simply just has a lot more going for it than GD does. And this is based on my personal experience and knowledge with both games. You could be amazing at Roblox physics, but be unable to be back on track. I don't think it's entirely an opinion whether which one is harder, but it's definitely influenced by your ability to play either game. You can absolutely disagree with me. In fact, it's fun to read comments that I disagree with as long as they're actually nice. I just wanted to make a silly little video. Good night, everyone. Sub 90! I'm gonna get sub 90! Yay!
I'm not, because you kept on failing.
Okay, ready? Oh my god! No! No! No!